How's it going, Jubitarians? This is Bradley Juby, and this is Top 10 Thursday, number 77. For those of you who are keeping track, this is the top 10 Disney animated movies. Let's start at number 10 with The Fox and the Hound. This is one of my favorite movies because it's a story about friendship and an unlikely friendship between a fox named Todd and a hound named Copper. It also stars Mickey Rooney, Kurt Russell, Corey Feldman, the same guy who does the voice of, who plays Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And it's a very nice story. It's well told and an underrated Disney classic. Number 9, of course, is Cinderella. Of course, everybody loves Cinderella. It's a story about a young lady named Cinderella and her evil stepmother and wicked stepsisters. She lives the dream of one day becoming a princess, and she marries a prince at a ball. After a ball. Sorry. I'm going to make mistakes like this, so yeah. And of course, I like the song Bippity Boppity Boo. I'll tell you about it later, but because I got to get on with this countdown. Number 8, of course, is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a story of sin, redemption, rejection, religion, and all that other stuff. It's one of the darkest Disney films I've ever seen, but Esmeralda was gorgeous in that movie. I liked her. But it was one of the best Disney movies in the 90s. Hands down. Number 7, of course, is The Rescuers Down Under, which is a sequel to The Rescuers from the 1970s, which I'll get to later. But speaking of Down Under, shout out to my friend Maggie. Happy Valentine's Day, Maggie. But one scene that stands out in this movie was when Wilbur, the flying albatross, played by John Candy, rest in peace, he was just rocking out to some music, and then Bernard and Miss Bianca turn it off. And he's like, "Hey, who killed the music?" I still love that part. Because whenever I'm rocking out and the music just suddenly stops for some reason, I'm like, "Hey, who killed the music?" Yeah. Never interrupt anybody when they're rocking out. Alright? So, yeah. I feel you, Wilbur. I feel you. Number 6 is, of course, the prequel to that movie, The Rescuers, in which Bernard and Miss Bianca head on down to Louisiana to rescue a girl named Penny, trapped by an evil woman named Medusa. And of course there's a dragonfly by the name of Evinrude. I like him. He was pretty funny. But and poor Bernard, he's so superstitious. Has a fear of flying and a fear of the number 13. Poor guy. Poor guy. But he does have a pretty lady partner in Miss Bianca. She's quite a gorgeous gal. Even though she's a mouse, but still. Number 5, we have Aladdin. I remember this was probably the first movie I ever saw in theaters with my mom when I was in kindergarten, I think. So, He was at the General Cinema over at the old Eastland Mall back in the day. I miss those days. But anyway, Aladdin has always been one of my favorites over the years. I can't wait for the live action version with Will Smith. That's going to be awesome, I think. But the original with Robin Williams, hands down one of my favorites. Hands down. Number 4 is, of course, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Hi ho, it's off to work we go. I mean, there was a prince, there was that evil queen, not stepmother, but evil queen, with her jealousy issues. And of course the lovely Snow White. Why'd you have to eat that poison apple, Snow White? Why? But mirror on the wall, you're the fairest of them all, Snow White. But, anyway, number 3, of course, is one of my all-time favorite movies, The Little Mermaid. I used to love watching this as a kid. It's a classic. One of the greatest films of all time, in my opinion. Along with the other two on this countdown. But, oh my gosh. I just love Ariel. She is one of the most beautiful Disney princesses ever. With her long, lovely red hair, and her sweet, young smile, and her beautiful singing voice. Reminds me of a certain somebody. You know who you are, beautiful. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way. And of course, makes a deal with Ursula. Ugh. Loses her voice, becomes human, tries to seduce the prince, or fall in love with the prince. Not really seduce the prince, but sorry for the choice of words, but and of course her mean old bigoted dad, King Triton, who hates humans, despite probably not even knowing a human, but oh, The Little Mermaid is one of my favorite movies of all time. And so is number 2 on this countdown, and that would have to be A Tale as Old as Time, Song as Old as Rhyme, Beauty and the Beast. Oh, I just love everything about this movie. It's not just the animated movie, but the live action one. I actually like the live action version of this better than the animated version. But nonetheless, I mean, it's my favorite bibliophilic princess named Belle. And of course, her anger-driven, feeling like he's eternally damned beast, trying to find his redemption in his humanity. The enchanted objects like Lumiere and Cogsworth and Mrs. Potts. And then, of course, there's Gaston, that arrogant, unlikable jock who thinks he's entitled to Belle because he's knee-deep in his toxic masculinity. But I don't even want to talk about that. That's another story for another time. But yeah, I love the live-action version with the gorgeous Emma Watson and Dan Stevens and Ewan McGregor and Sir Ian McKellen and Emma Thompson and all those peeps. Okay, now I'm going to give an honorable mention to 2 films. One of them being Sleeping Beauty, which is a Disney classic that somehow didn't make it on this countdown. I feel like I have to do an honorable mention for Sleeping Beauty, because And Maleficent just gives me the creeps. And the live action one with Angelina Jolie gives me the creeps too. I am not an Angelina Jolie fan, by the way. And there's also another honorable mention to Pocahontas. I like Pocahontas. A lot of people don't know this, but Christian Bale played a guy named Thomas, who was one of the English settlers. But that's an unknown fact about this film. That was before he got really famous with American Psycho and the Dark Knight trilogy. But, of course, it had Mel Gibson in it, and it's kind of a story about, colonization, stuff like that. But still trying to paint with all the colors of the wind. But at number 1 on this countdown is, of course, the king itself, The Lion King. Not just one of the greatest animated films of all time, but one of the greatest movies of all time. I mean, if you had to put this in a top 10 of films of all time, this has to be the one. It may not be number 1, because there's a lot of better films like Citizen Kane, Gone with the Wind. But The Lion King has to be at the top in terms of animated films, because basically this is pretty much like a Disney version of Hamlet with lions and African animals. But the story's just beautiful and sad at times and stuff like that. Okay, that's Top 10 Thursday for this week. Get your free format Friday questions in. This is Brother GB saying peace out and happy Valentine's Day.